Allow me to introduce you to the magical world of TikTok art tutorials, where creativity meets short-form content and conforms itself into a gigantic mush of nonsensical entertainment, memes, and random gibberish if you ask me, feeding our eyes for 15 seconds or more with videos that are supposedly informative art tutorials with just a hint of chitter-chatter on the side, and the end results are, well, nonsense for the most part. Hey, how's it going and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about the problem with art tutorials and more specifically how TikTok and short form content has ruined art tutorials and is still doing so as we speak. Before the intervention of TikTok and Instagram Reels, artists learning art all lived in a happy society filled with a plethora of videos to learn from, ranging from short 10-minute videos from their favorite creators who were not so aggressive to their young and impressionable audience to long videos with lots of information covering different topics and giving you enough time to digest all the sweet art knowledge your little baby brain was trying to learn. And just like the avatar, the four nations of beginner artists and seasoned veterans all lived together in harmony. Then everything changed when they brought this app. From long meaningful tutorials that were actually filled with useful information and tricks that could potentially guide you in your journey as an artist, we were now forced to consume a barrage of short 15 to 20 second videos, mostly filled with part nonsense, or forcefully stuffed with meaningful information, watered down and condensed to fit into the 1 minute mark, leaving you completely clueless and scratching your head after watching the video because there's just so much lack of context and information missing.
How to draw hands. He's really doing it. So what I do is draw the forearm, attach the palm box, extend the fingers and the thumb, and choose whether it's a back side of the hand or the front side. Whoa, slow down, man. Can you explain this a bit more in depth?
Don't worry, little fella, I got you.
Take a box, bend the top, take this half point and this point over here, and there's the thumb. Now extend your middle finger the same as this distance, arch it down like so and so, do the same with the half point and the half one, which shows you your fingers, and bring them closer towards the middle one. Now flesh your hand bones out, and there you have it. A hand that can go this way or this way or this way, perhaps this way. Oh yes.
That was so much info. Why is the pinky finger so long? Why is the thumb so small? Pinky looks wrong. I need a tutorial for the tutorial. As if we've not already had confusing enough content on the app that could lead to severe brain damage and even a concussion if you stare at your screen long enough. Now anybody who's trying to learn from TikTok is stuck with learning from short form videos. Of course, it's clear that the artist knows a bit of what they're talking about and could probably draw something with the semblance of the upper body feet, but confusing the young audience with incoherent steps that could otherwise be completely avoided and approached in an entirely different way without having to force yourself to learn advanced math and arithmetic because you're trying to learn how to draw a hand seems to be an exclusive trait with these TikTok art tutorials. Tell me why we have to draw all these dots and lines and connect them to each other and then section off the entire hand just because we're trying to draw a simple gesture of the hand when we could have started with something as simple as a basic shape. Maybe it's just me and I'm overthinking a little too much for my peanut brain, so let's just move on. Consuming information on the internet has been nothing short of common, and with the influx of short-form content circulating the internet, it becomes harder and harder to separate what's fact from what's fiction. And this can create a lot of stress and confusion when you're looking for the facts. It's important to consult your information at the direct source, and this is where Ground News comes in. Ground News is an app and website created to give readers a transparent way to read the news. With access to over 50,000 news sources, it allows you to compare headlines to see who owns the source and where the bias leans per article, giving you the complete overview for every story. For example, recently we've heard that the US could pass a bill that could ban TikTok if the China-based owner doesn't sell the app. On Ground News, you can see that 388 sources reported on this story, and you can also get a visual representation of the political leaning of these sources on the bias distribution chart. 23% of these sources lean right and 28% of these sources lean left for this story. We can also see in the ownership chart, it shows that 45% of the sources reporting are owned by media conglomerates. Let's look at some of the headlines. This headline from the left, Newsmax host calls TikTok ban the dumbest legislation I've ever seen yet after majority of Republicans vote in favor. And this from the right, local TikTok creator concerned after House passes bill that could lead to a ban of the app. Both headlines talk about the same story, but the right says the bill has already been passed, which could lead to a possible ban, while the left only highlights that the majority of Republicans voted in favor of it. The language used on the right, House passes bill, can evoke us to feel worried since TikTok is going to be banned soon, while the left focuses on how the TikTok ban is a dumb legislative decision. One of my favorite features of ground news is the blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum, such as this story, Task Force to Recognize Transgender Day of Visibility with Online Forum, which is clearly underreported by one side of the political spectrum. Blind spot feed is fully unlocked through the Vantage plan, so head over to the link in my description, ground.news/Mohammed, to get 40% off and unlimited access to the platform through the Vantage subscription, which is worth about $5 a month.
We have to stop with this Lumis Method brain rot.
Okay, calling the Lumis Method brain rot is literally insane because, like, how can you insult Andrew Loomis when his drawings look like this? Also, let's be clear, the only brain rot I know is edging to Baby Gronk before Livy Dunn Phantom taxes my mewing streak while I'm looks maxing to Skibidi Toilet and raising a level 10 GAT. What am I even saying at this point, man?
There's an easier way to think about drawing.
Many of you might be aware of the drawings of John Singer Sargent, some of the greatest ever created, but these guys actually wrote books on how to draw like them, so let's work through that same method. The first step is to mark the bottom and the top of your paper of where you want it to belong. This is going to establish where the whole drawing is. And then we're going to enclose the drawing with an envelope. We're just using long, basic, mostly straight lines to capture the general proportions of the head.
Now, as a person with what I like to call average but above subpar drawing skills, I happen to understand what he's explaining at this point and can also start a drawing like this. But imagine you, a beginner artist still struggling to learn the basic fundamentals of art with clearly zero knowledge of basic shapes and zero knowledge of human anatomy, trying to start off your drawings like this. That's an exquisite recipe for a complete disaster.
This envelope stage of a drawing is by far the most important stage. You can't build a house on a shaky foundation, so take your time and establish the proportions. Next, I divide the head into thirds. 1/3 from the chin to the nose, the next third from the nose to the forehead, and then up to the hairline. All or almost all figures fall into this rule of thirds. Once you have a general system of proportion, it's easy to add details. It's because you start with a single eye that your face gets totally slanted towards the end of it.
Bro, this is the Lumis Method, then proceeds to show a tutorial of the Lumis Method. You are literally the skill equivalent of a second-year student. You have no business calling the Lumis Method brain rot or teaching anyone anything. Oof. My first thought when I started reading that comment was, maybe this might be someone I shared sentiment with. But calling his skill level the equivalent of a second-year student, I'll literally have to go hide my face somewhere after reading that. I've seen more progress by just simple observation, looking at something and mimicking it. All those lines and shapes confuse me and isn't fun. I'm sure everyone else who doesn't understand how to use construction lines to start their drawing, or doesn't know how to start their drawings with just simple basic shapes, also thinks they're confusing at first. But that's absolutely where the phrase "trust the process" comes into play. Do we really need to shame people for how they create art? If you don't like the method, then don't use it. Now, my kind fellow user of the Forsaken Chinese app, that's where you happen to be wrong. You can't just create content on social media and post it without shaming others to stroke your own ego and boost your self-confidence, while baiting the unsuspecting audience to leave hateful comments on the video to increase its engagement and rack up the watch time so you can get a slice of that sweet creator reward program. That's just rule 101 of the internet, sweetheart. The more hate you can trigger with your video, the better views it gets, which could potentially be what the artist intended to do with this video. Judging from his final drawing and seeing that he may have also used the Lumis method, he clearly was just trying to trigger his audience. Personally, I don't even use the Lumis method to draw heads because I find it kind of difficult when trying to show the direction the head is facing. So now I just prefer to start with a rectangle or a square for the head, since that way I can see what plane faces which each direction, and then I draw my features over that using the inverted triangle and a cross to place the eyes and the nose. For the most part, I really enjoyed the videos he makes because they don't suffer from information suffocation like every other art tutorial on TikTok, and also because I think he actually possesses a vast understanding of art and he shares his knowledge with his audience in rather intelligent and thoughtfully well put together takes, which will probably fly over your head if you're not paying close attention to his videos.
There's no need to draw the features. When we get caught up on our ideas of what features look like, our preconceived notions of the world, we get these half-truth, half-lie abominations of what we're looking at. But we don't need to do that. We just need to simplify down what we're looking at. There's easier ways to do this. And we can find the tilt of the features, we can find the center line down the face, right up to that brow, center line down the nose, center line to the center of the nose, right in here. And then all we have to do is mark out the width. And we have pretty much 90% of everything that we need, believe it or not. And I'll show it to you. It's this box. This is all you really need. Okay, we got one tone for the underside of the nose, one tone for the side of the nose, and one for the top of the nose. And then we can create the feeling of this smoothness, this depth, this blending by pushing these edges together. We still keep it simple, like this top plane of the nostril here is gonna get the top lighting. And every time we need to round a corner, we need to make the surface smoother on an edge, and we add a new value, a transitionary value in between two tones. Just like this piece of paper, it's all flat right now, so we get one tone. But as soon as I take a little bend in here, this becomes a darker value. And I can add another bend, and now we have 1, 2, and 3 values. With each new value that we add, we're turning that piece of paper, we're sculpting the form. And even though this is a bit crude, it's gonna fit right in because those values are on and the basic form reads well. And when we back up, Velasquez has just spent a little bit more time on those edges, making sure everything flows into each other. But this is what you need to start out with, and then you can spend your time refining your edges if that's the look that you want.
You won't believe how long I spent actually scrolling through TikTok to find a good useful art tutorial, because most of the tutorials on TikTok either don't explain what the artist is doing for the most part, or are just relatable gags that other artists will be able to understand because they suffer from them as well. But sometimes you eventually get lucky and strike gold, which might be able to help you somehow.
Here's 5 common anatomy mistakes. Number 1, completely forgetting about the forehead. We can't ignore this any longer. It's like you karate chopped a cerebellum. Just remember that the eye is usually in the middle of that guide circle, and the mouth is at the bottom. Number 2 is drawing only with straight lines. Rarely anything on the human body is a straight line. And this is due to the shape of our muscles, which we won't get into right now. Number 3. Drawing the smile with all the teeth. It is 110% unnecessary. Just look at it. You can leave some space and it'll look amazing. Number 4. Drawing little hills for feet. I used to do this too, but a foot has curves in it. It's like a triangular shape. I can't. Number 5. Drawing the body one part at a time. Draw the form before the details, and I promise it'll look 100 times better.
For the most part, these tips are good and helpful, especially for the first tip of drawing the skull, because I wouldn't even lie to you, I have made some rather questionable drawings in my spare time that look absolutely horrible because I was feeling either lazy or uninspired and didn't feel like focusing on my proportions. But I guess art tutorials are also subjective because the comment section was filled with a large number of people just arguing, saying the tips were not good enough or just served a particular art style. I hate to break it to you, but yes, art has rules. Having a consistent and aesthetically pleasing personal style comes from learning them first, but you can't know how to break a rule in an interesting and intentional way without first knowing what it is in the first place. Agreed. Everyone talking about style and subjectivity in art needs to remember that you will never improve unless you learn the rules to art. Now, while this may stand true for the most part, I still believe you can learn art while still drawing in a particular art style. You're not stuck or forced to learn art in one specific art style at all, and there is no God-sent art style that automatically makes your learning process faster. Just learn with whatever art style you're comfortable comfortable drawing with. I don't know why people are mad. She's just helping with anatomy tips. It's better to know how the body works before you decide to shape them into your style. I believe most of the people commenting on this TikTok account and arguing with the other people who were also commenting on this TikTok account were assuming the artist was only talking about drawing in one specific art style, which was clearly not the case. Except, well, this person who left this comment. What am I even reading, chat? Aside from the obvious problem of artists forced to make their tutorials short for TikTok and other platforms that support short-form content, leaving out so many bits and pieces of information that could potentially be useful to one artist or another, especially because art is quite nuance-based, and one thing that might be considered wrong in one art tutorial could potentially be correct in a different context, which is why I prefer just watching longer videos when it comes to learning a particular drawing technique or painting process. But just because longer videos could potentially mean better content, it doesn't mean all short-form videos are bad. Some artists on TikTok have found ways to make their videos quite short but fill in as much nuance in the videos by also replying to comments under the videos with more context that could be helpful. While there are multiple ways of making short-form videos quite short, quick, informative, and entertaining, for the most part I just tend to enjoy videos where the artist keeps everything simple and just goes straight to the point. Which brings me to the next problem I have with some TikTok art tutorials. Memes. Meme edits have been around for a while now, and you can always find a meme or two in a YouTube video from one of your favorite creators, and they're used rather sparingly to either elevate the humor in the video or react to a particular action or scene in the said video. I'm also guilty of using a meme or two in my videos, so I guess you can lock my hands and throw away the keys.
I beg your pardon?
Meme art tutorials are a new trend that started where the artist uses memes and funny reactions to emphasize certain parts of their videos in order to make it much more entertaining to a younger audience, to the point where the videos start to feel like they're being made for a literal child with all the fast-paced editing, reactions, and sound effects that are being used. I first noticed this style pop up with Kooleen, and for the most part her videos were still well-paced and pretty enjoyable, but other artists on TikTok have also adopted using memes in their videos. Here's an example of what I mean.
Wanna learn how to draw eyes like this? First draw a parallelogram, then draw this weird shaped thing that looks like a ramen bowl. Connect it right here to add the tear duct. Inside that, draw a half circle, then erase the guidelines. Add details and the eyelashes. We're gonna put a bunch of colors and blend. I know it sucks right now, but trust the process. This is what it looks like after blending it out with my Ultra Chad brush. I made sure that everything was desaturated so that when I do add saturated colors, it's gonna pop out. It makes the eyes look like a vampire's, which is hot. And there you go, a hot anime eye. Now let's draw the other eye.
Here's how I make a pencil portrait sketch. Let's go. First thing I do is grab my sketchbook, and then I'm going to surround myself by all of the references I found on Pinterest. When sketching, I make sure my lead is really long, and then while I'm sketching, I try to block out all of the facial features on my face. What I'm trying to do is slowly block in the shadows over time, and then eventually I'm going to try to use my eraser for the highlights. And make sure your eraser is clean or else you're going to get those marks. And since I'm not a human printer, I overlay my drawing in Procreate just to see the errors that I made on my reference, and then hopefully I can work on it.
As you can see, they're both two different videos talking about different topics, but they both follow a similar pattern of delivery when it comes to the editing. Although Kooleen has a rather slower paced video than the other artists, they're both good videos that are quite entertaining and informative for the most part. Using memes can elevate your editing and make your videos much more entertaining. But my problem is when the editing begins to overshadow the actual information in the video to the point where your audience is just completely overwhelmed by all the reactions, sound effects, and memes that are used in the videos, and they can't even properly understand what you're trying to teach them. Memes should be used in moderation. Think about the type of audience you're making your videos for. Ideally, you want your videos to be able to appeal to every kind of audience in the end, not just age groups addicted to their iPad games and Cocomelon. If you're wondering what the abomination you just witnessed on your mobile device or computer screen is, well, you're in luck. Because you are not alone. Why? In what situation? When you got scared very violently, when you're in need of $3,000, in a very peculiar situation where it feels like your heart has stopped beating and you feel the glimpse of fear rush through your crimson red blood. What are these comments? Somehow TikTok has forced us to believe that every form of art somehow needs a tutorial. When you're desperately in need of learning how to draw poo, you need all the help you can find, which is kinda ironic because their entire page is filled with other art tutorials that are actually decent and useful. But this one scares the shit out of me. No pun intended, no pun intended. Draw This Not That tutorials are probably the art community's cancer of tutorials. These forms of tutorials consist of a normal looking drawing labeled as wrong, placed side by side with another normal looking drawing labeled as right. These two drawings, which may both look similar in style, are made to look different because one drawing is supposedly wrong in the context of that drawing, but the other one is automatically the right way to draw that particular thing or object. Now, while this form of art tutorial particularly irks my brain every time I see it on my For You page, I can't help but wonder what goes on in the minds of the people who sit down and conjure these images one after the other, while telling themselves, yes, this looks correct and other artists will be delighted to learn from this. Explain to me why drawing a character with bangs and straight hair is boring and artificial looking. Isn't it clear that both hairstyles are different and can be used for different drawings? Explain to me why the male face must have sharp edges and a pointed jawline while the female face should be curved and drawn to look chubby. Literally, any of these features could work for either gender if they are switched without even looking wrong or out of place. Every time I see one of these tutorials, they always find something in particular to label as wrong, which might completely be right in a different subcontext their little pea brains cannot comprehend. Although these types of tutorials are not too common on TikTok since they're mostly text-based, you'll find a lot of these types of posts on Instagram and Twitter, where it's easier to read and the comments are filled with people who take out their precious time to write paragraphs telling them just how bad their tutorials are. Don't call yourself an artist again. This isn't art. The fact that a large number of TikTok babies in the comments believe this shouldn't be called art just baffles me. Back in my university, I saw paintings like this a lot and were mostly appreciated by people who understood abstract art and loved it for the meaningfulness it held for the artist rather than how the painting looked. I'd pay $40 because it's not good enough to hang in the house, but great for rotting in the garage. Well, as a wise man once said, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. You, my parasocial friend, may not be the beholder of this painting. Therefore, you cannot see the beauty that lies before your eyes. Since I understand everyone places value on different things, what you may not find valuable will be invaluable to another person. Say, an art collector, for example.
Stop being a dick showing off your art supplies. I'm not rich like you. If I had the same, I could draw just like that. I do have to admit I was rather surprised to read that in my inbox the other day. So let's draw with art supplies that are less than €1 each. As a professional artist, I of course do have professional art supplies. And believe me, I know they do get quite pricey. But in order to create and make art, you don't need them. You can create with basically anything. And I know a lot of especially young artists that are just starting out, they might not have the budget for it. Believe me, I've been there, done that. But you can create art with things that you're using for school. Perhaps this might be an unpopular opinion, but the quality of your art supplies does not necessarily mean the quality of your art improves. I firmly believe that limited resources in art supplies can make you even more creative. Use what you have and come up with more and more ideas. Because at the end of the day, the only real limitation to your creativity is you.
I kinda didn't know where this video was going for the most part, but I believe the message had something to do with making art regardless of what tools you have, and also believing in yourself when things are looking shabby. I'm poor and I can't afford expensive art supplies, so stop showing off your art. It's not our problem that you're broke, babe. Art is easier with expensive stuff and it can create stuff, but it's still 99% skill. Expensive supplies help cut time, but it doesn't replace the skill and effort put into each piece. I'm honestly just too tired and brain dead to make a decent reply to this comment, so I'll just leave it to you guys to explain what they mean in the comments. Well, it looks like we've made it to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, share the video with a friend, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. With all that being said, I'll see all you pretty penguins in the next video. Bye!